I was privileged to welcome my next guest to the podcast for a discussion that I had been looking forward to for some time. Steven Stark is now CEO and President of Tsawwassen Shuttles Inc, a very successful company here in Vancouver. But he also has a story of adversity. Things didn't start off easy for Steven, yet he found a way to turn his life around from darkness to light. I'm privileged to introduce and to share the story today on Rachel Thexton Connects of Steven Stark. First, let me start by welcoming him. His name is Steven Stark, and he is President and CEO of Tsawwassen Shuttles Inc. Steven, thank you so much for taking the time to discuss and chat and tell your story here today with me.
Great, thank you. Yeah, first of all, I just want to show some gratitude and thank you for allowing me on your podcast. Yes, my name is Steven Stark. My ancestral name is Swәnnәset. I come from the salmon people facing the sea at Tsawwassen First Nation. You know, there's quite a big story background. Well, more recent years, I'm been a fisherman long time, commercial crabber, native crabbing, native salmon, and just kind of evolved my skills and my ideas into business. I think my mom has always said I've been an entrepreneur even as a young boy. Always
Really?
had that spirit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a gift for sure. Not everyone has that, and you surely do. I'm going to get to some detail around that actually. I have a couple questions, but I want to start, if it's okay with you, by just chatting with you a little bit about who you are in your business. So you have an incredibly successful business. Looking into it, Tsawwassen Shuttles, one might think shuttles, but there is much more to it than that. Can we start in the present, and can you tell us a little bit about the business and what this incredibly successful entrepreneur, being yourself, has created with Tsawwassen Shuttles Inc?
For sure. Tsawwassen Shuttles is way bigger than just a shuttle bus and company, as most would think. Tsawwassen Shuttles would correlate, but that seems to be the umbrella of the company and the brand that I seem to have made. Which, I have to also give a lot of thanks to Brian Paye and Nikki Burgunder, which were mentors for me getting my business up and running, and now the mentee is now mentoring the mentors, and so it's quite the transition. But Tsawwassen Shuttles is also a marine-based company. We deal with a lot of the EA studies. We don't do them, but we execute the EA studies within the region on the water for Golder, Hamera, LGL. We work on projects like Patella Bridge, George Massey, Roberts Bank Terminal 2, Burrard Inlet, wood fiber. The marine boats go in a variety of different areas and do water sampling, crabs and ooligans, and in the estuary, and salmon studies. Like, there's just a variety of different environmental based studies that will collect data for EA studies to see projects either move forward or they don't. And then, shuttle busing for good reasons. I do school bus runs for kids at Tsawwassen First Nation. We got about 80 kids, three buses go to 8 different schools, and we've had that contract almost for 10 years. And then that kind of just blossomed into dealing with Delta District's field trips for most of the schools, then working in Richmond for field trips, Surrey in field trips, and working with different nations for their needs. And now it just organically has grown to the point where referrals come in almost daily from different schools, months in advance for bookings. And so dozens of buses and employees running in that division. Go back to the marine sector. We hire a lot of Indigenous people from different communities just because there's not as much fishing and crabbing anymore. So this is a good substitute to keep their livelihood going for their families. Now to jump back forward again, we do street sweeping. We work with every major project, small scale, large scale, miscible, We work on Highway 1. We do the Surrey Langley SkyTrain, won the Steveston Interchange. We do a lot of milling with different companies and construction companies that are doing preload. Water trucking as well. They're the same facet styles of businesses with the same clients, so that was an easy transition. Um, and
When
dust
do you
control.
sleep, Stephen?
I sleep very well. The employees maybe not so much. They work day and night depending on their shifts,
Yeah.
depending on what jobs they are on as well. So and then tow trucks.
Wow.
Recently, just signed a relationship agreement with Main Roads of BC. Main Roads and I, by their guidance, I opened up a new tow truck company in partnership with Glen Traffics and myself. And we took over 7 bridges in Vancouver as the new standby tow truck company, which Main Roads has kind of set the bar high by working closely with an Indigenous business and not knowing anything about the industry. It's been a really good relationship so far and a 3-way partnership on that. And so there's Tsawwassen Shuttles, and then there's all the facets underneath it.
Amazing. Wow. So no wonder I did a news search on your name, and the pages were multiple. So that makes sense. You've certainly built an incredibly successful business. I mentioned at the beginning, before I introduced you, that I've been looking forward to this discussion, and it's for a few reasons. One of them is I love having Indigenous guests on the show. Um, Primarily for selfish reasons, actually, because I like to learn. I have so many questions. A friend of mine, Wade Grant, Tsawwassen Nation, I guess taught me to just ask the questions, and it's okay. And just learn. And so I said, okay, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to do it. And if I sound ignorant, that's okay, because that means that I'm learning and I won't sound ignorant next time. And so I want to be able to learn. And I think every non-Indigenous person should, really put their learning hat on 100% with Indigenous peoples in our country. So that's one reason. And the other is your story of resilience and the way in which you took what was a challenging childhood and youth and turned it around into what you just described, a business that's incredibly successful, and a life in which we'll talk about a little bit here. So this has been one that I've really been looking forward to a lot. I just wanted to mention that. So thank you. So backing up, as a child, you had needs that were not met. Your home life, moving frequently. I understand your stepfather worked in gold mining, if I'm correct. And
Yeah.
so you were moving around a lot, which prevented some learning diagnosis, perhaps dyslexia, excuse me, and legal deafness, which led to a speech impediment. And it wasn't until the 4th grade, so after 14 reconstructive ear surgeries, that you heard words properly for the first time. So you would have been about 9 years old at this time. So my question to you, Stephen, is this. So both literally and also, via kind of your feelings, what was the world telling you before this treatment, before you could hear properly? What did you feel like you were getting from the world, both via, sound and via, what messaging are you getting from the world before those surgeries allowed you to hear?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the bit of background. Just for clarification, I had 2 reconstructive eardrum surgeries, and then the remainder ones were ongoing tubes that needed to be put in my ear canals. And so I remember waking up on the very first surgery, and my stepdad and my mom were there, and they both cried because it was really like the first time that I could really hear clarity. And you know, um, part of the trauma that I've gone through in my childhood. I have a very blurred memory as my childhood for good reasons. There's been a lot of things that have been blocked out of my mind. Um, but what I do know is that like any childhood, there's always been some good times and some bad times, and not they weren't all bad, but when they were, they were. And growing up as a child of trauma, and it probably led even as a toddler and an infant, because my mom did have to leave my biological father for extensive abuse towards myself and my brother. And so there is good evidence to show that I may have not have been born legally deaf, but more took blunt smacks on the side of the ears that would have created ear damage to my lobes and my ear canals. And so that's more likelihood what has happened now as we get a little bit older and we start to realize.
Yeah.
But I've seen the world a bit different because as a child of trauma, you listen for footsteps, tones, verbiage, body language, which all has given me the tools to be able to walk into a room and recognize who's who and who's a threat in the room, and be able to help navigate, and also how to make friends and keep on long-term relationships as well. And so I think my trauma is the reason why I've been quite successful. And it's because it's not because of education. I can tell you that right now, because
Yeah.
as a grade 9 dropout, that's as far as I went.
Well, we could go talk a little bit about education, but I think it was in you, as you said at the beginning of the conversation offline, or maybe we were online. It's kind of, you mentioned your mom thought you had this spirit in you of an entrepreneur since the beginning. Is that
Yeah,
right?
she's always said it. She lives in Spokane right now with my stepdad, but she's always said, growing up as a kid, they would watch me go and shovel snow and rake leaves and cut people's grass, and eventually I was doing so well that my two older brothers, one being 4 years old, Jeremy, and then my other brother Ron, which is a year older than me, they decided that they wanted in on the action, and because I was making money and I was paying for my own stuff, and so they self-managed themselves. My older brother became the manager, and then Ron was going to help facilitate and work boots on the ground. And this lasted for about a week because of my good nature. I let them in on the business. But shortly after, my mom and my dad pulled me off to the side and they're like, Steven, you're already doing all this on your own. You don't need your brother to manage you. You collect your own money. You go to knock on the doors. You don't need them, get them to do their own. So I fired both of them. And I took over the family business again.
Well, letting people go is tough. So you learned that at a very young age.
Yes.
And people close to you. That's awesome. So it's you experienced abuse in your home, as has been reported about in interviews that you've spoken to,
Yeah.
at the hand of your stepfather, and as you've just said, biological father as well. But after meeting your biological father again, or reconnecting, I suppose it would be, at the age of 15, he introduced you to drugs, hard drugs, starting what was a pretty painful part of your life, young life. I also met my biological father later in life, and just thought I'd share that I wish I had not opened that door. It was one that caused me a lot of trauma. Do you wish you had not opened that door, or do you feel it's part of what built, this drive, this resilience, this, who you are?
Well, destiny shall have it. I was destined to meet him one way or another. And unfortunately, growing up as a young boy prior to meeting him, it was a bit dysfunctional. I was kicked out of home at the age of 15 years old with a one-way bus ticket from Denver, Colorado to downtown Vancouver, and was told never to come home again. And 11 years later was the first time I talked to my mom after that. And so, but as a displaced young man wanting family in his life, it was my older brother, Jeremy, that kind of picked me up from the Greyhound in Vancouver and took me back to OK Falls. And I lived in a one-bedroom bungalow with him, cooking out of a Chinese restaurant that he was running, and I was dishwashing. And there was a moment in time where my grandmother on my mom's side called me and said, "Hey, if you want to get to know your biological father, he's going to be coming through your territory in OK Falls in a couple days." And so she said, "Here's the phone number." And I wasted no time. I immediately called that number without regrets. And he met me, and unbeknownst to me, he was in the marijuana trade back then prior to being legal.
Yeah.
So doing some shady stuff, I'm sure. And But that didn't deter me. I wanted to be close to my biological father. As you will hear me refer to him as my biological, I don't call him my dad. And I do have a dad, and that is my stepdad. Regardless of the history we have, he is still the man that raised me. But eager to move and to be close to him, I left everything in OK Falls. After a month of getting to know him, I moved to TFN. And that's when I found out I was from Tsawwassen First Nation. I found out that I had these roots, and something that I've always looked forward to was a sense of identity,
Yeah.
and something I could lean back on for cultural awareness and spirituality of some sort. Not sure what it was at that point for me, but I just knew that there was a place for me. And regardless of the relationship I had with him, which, I think I moved here, and within 3 weeks of moving here, I was smoking crack with him in a crack house.
Mm-hmm.
And that just kind of set it off. But the beautiful thing that came out of that, regardless of the years of addiction, was I met so many aunties and cousins and uncles, and had a sense of belonging. While I wasn't loved by all and rejected by some because I was the new kid on the block, I needed to prove myself over time. But it was moving back and forth. I moved to Calgary, moved to Penticton, and then eventually settled my roots after living on the streets in Calgary for 4 years between 2000 and 2004. I came back and faced my destiny as to what I thought it was going to be, which was a really dark, dark time for me between 2004 to 2006. I accepted my fate of being an addict moving forward, that I was going to be stuck where I was. And that's stuck in a daily routine of like wake up, walk to Tsawwassen Drive, borrow $1 or $2 from each person I seen, grab all the cigarette butts I could out of the Tsawwassen First Nations administration building, and then ended up at my Aunt Shirley's place every day, almost pulling weeds, listening to stories about my grandmother and history that she would teach me. And she'd get me to do filings and paperwork, and she'd make me sandwiches, or I would have to cook her a sandwich and soup. And she'd give me my $40 plus the 20 I scrambled up, and I would go back to the user house that I was at, and it was like Groundhog Day for me.
Mm-hmm.
I accepted it.
So that time was, obviously dark and painful, but with a little bit of peppering in of culture and getting to know the identity. Is that correct? Would you describe it that way?
100%.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Your story is obviously a powerful one, inspirational. I would imagine to you, it's obviously painful looking back at certain elements of it. In the bio that I received and certain things I read, for those who don't know, there was physical, emotional abuse and substance use, being homeless, etc. And your traumas are ones that, some may think one could not move past. And I've said this to guests before. Guy Felicello on the show, the first season. I don't know if you know him or not, but some people pass those who are either on the downtown east side or other areas and kind of look at them as, that one's lost cause. That's, not going to get past. They'll be like that for till the end. And I always get really frustrated with that way of looking at things. And I just don't believe that for anybody. But everyone has their own path of healing. And I'm wondering what for you was the healing piece that got you out of those years, 2004 to 2006, which you describe as, some of your darkest years. And I know that's a hard question because it's, a layered one.
Mm-hmm.
But
no, it's actually a good question. And the light bulb didn't go off until about maybe the last 4 months of 2020 or 2005, before I got clean. Just started 2006. I started asking questions to myself of like, is there something wrong? Is there a better life for me? Is there something that I could do more? And the previous couple years before that, it was like I accepted the faith of the Grim Reaper, that I was going to be an addict and I'm probably going to die young, or maybe potentially be in jail for something. Hopefully nothing terrible, but in a perpetual circle of disparity and broken down. But something inside of me started to flicker a light, and then others started to see it as well. And then one day it was, and to truth be told, I was in heavy addiction. I was up for a few days and not doing my best. I got some old photos of me from back then as well, and unrecognizable. You would not even think that that was the same person at all. And I got picked up by a gentleman called Mike Baird, one of my second cousins, and he said, "Get in the truck." And it was 7 in the morning, and I thought I was going for breakfast. I was so hungry. I needed a cigarette as well. I was up for days, and he took me to my first AA meeting called How It Works in Ladner, and I hated every minute of it, but
I
I
feel yeah.
stayed. But I stayed, and I just kept coming back. There was this lady named Sylvia, and Sylvia every day she would tell me, "Keep coming back," and it was like I cringed every time she said it. I was like just a chalkboard. And but I kept coming back, and I kept going back to this house that I had nowhere else to go. And yeah, I think I mustered about 3 months of sobriety at that time. And you talked about it in your notes, and I might as well just jump ahead because I remember nowhere to go, broken man, new to the program, didn't want to follow the principles, didn't want to pray, and didn't like the God creator, all that stuff that was in the room, and I didn't like the book. And I sat there miserable, holding a coffee, but I held a warm chair because I had nowhere to go. And it was the last straw for me. And something told me that if you're not going to be able to do it this time, then when are you going to get another chance? And so, but I think I was 3 months in, and I went to a meeting and bawled my eyes out one day. I couldn't help it, and I could barely muster the words up. But I was like, you know what? Either the Creator is going to show me a path soon, or I'm gonna just succumb to the temptations that are facing me daily. And at that meeting, Chief Ken Baird, also known as Chief Swәnnәset, he wasn't chief at the time. He was just Ken Baird, and he didn't take his ancestral name just yet as well. We took our names together years later. He was at that meeting, and he offered me an option. He came out of there, and he's a big guy. He is a big grizzly guy, 285 pounds, real native looking, and friendly giant though. Tattoos all over him. And basically, he said, "Look, I got a spare room. You can have it, but I require you to do a few things." And I said, "Whatever you want." He says, "Give me $200 worth of food every month. You do chores when I tell you. you help me with the kids in the morning for school. And he said, as long as you live with me, you go to 2 meetings every day. And I
Wow.
did. I went to 2 meetings every day for 5.5 years while I lived with them.
Wow. That's a commitment.
It was a commitment, yeah. And honestly, it was like uh, they talk about the promises. They talk about a lot of things in that room. You see a transformation of a person, change their thinking and thoughts. And I'm not. I'll be honest. Like I had heavy psychosis even in my first 6 months of from staying up for so long and years of addiction. Have little nattering in my ears. I call them the committee of assholes. That's what I call.
I like that. I'm going to note that here.
um, but Ken gave me a place to go, and I wasn't gonna ruin the opportunity. So he became a friend, a mentor, a father. You know, became just best friends, and his legacy lives on, even though Ken passed away a couple of years. But I'm forever indebted to him, and not go backwards.
Okay, so that leads me into my next question, actually, and that is that you were quoted in the Delta Optimist, a news article. It's from 2022, 2023, I believe. And you say, start quote, the big guy up there or somebody was going to step forward and give me an opportunity to get out of the situation I was living in. And that's when Ken Baird came out of nowhere. End of quote. And so my question for you is, do you rely on a faith today, whatever that may be?
I've always had faith. I think, I was baptized as a kid, went to Catholic school and Sunday school. Sunday school, not Catholic school, but I went to Sunday school growing up once in a while. And then even through my years of addiction and living on the streets as well, did a bunch of Jehovah Witnesses singing and stuff like that, and go out there and clap on the dance floor. And I had some good times. But the notion of this God figure person has never really resonated with me. I'm more of like, I know that there's something there. I know that it's spiritual. I know that it's an entity. I've been visited multiple times in my recovery as well. Growing up, I've been visited even in my addictions as well, to give me warning signs. I've personally have seen it, and I know what I've seen and what I feel, and so it's just something is there. It's unexplainable. Um, is it God? Is it a creator? Is it higher power? What I like about my faith, it allows me to believe in whatever I want. Right?
Yeah.
It gives me the freedom to decide: is it that telephone pole outside, or is it this figure over here that I want to hand over my higher power? And so, and that, I think those are the principles that I was always taught going to the room as well. And 2 meetings every day for 5.5 years kind of really nullifies your creator of some sort. But yeah, I believe in something, and it's there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the, well, I've heard and I kind of felt that way myself. One of the things that NAA, whatever it may be, the higher power part kind of sometimes turns people away, and it will actually make them turn around and walk out the door sometimes. But it doesn't have to be, like you said, a specific religion or man-made. It can be higher power, can be the earth. It can be however you see it, right? And it sounds like that's how your approach to it is your faith and your faith alone.
Yeah.
Okay. You talked about Ken Baird, who eventually did become chief of Tsawwassen Nation. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So he essentially changed your life, would you say?
Yeah, 100%. I wouldn't be here without the help of Ken. And the success that I've had with the business, and I don't know how I'd ever be able to repay that back. I've had some immediate family reach out to me as well over the last few years to because I have a spare bedroom and give them a safe place to stay for a couple months while they land on their feet. And I have kids in the house. Ken had kids in the house, and at some point I need to have trust that whoever I let in the house is going to follow the rules as well. But you just never know that one opportunity that you give somebody that can completely change your life. And Ken was elected to chief in 2018. I was elected to council at that time as well, so it was a huge milestone because we ran together and we served together. Prior to that, we both were on the Tsawwassen legislators as well, which is like the highest governance of Tsawwassen First Nation. There's 13 legislators that run, and then it's the highest four out of the legislators that become executive council, and then chief is a standalone election. So, and Ken was destined to be chief. He was just such a great, beloved person within the community and region, and fishing and crabbing, and decades and decades of being in and around this community in Delta. So Ken was very well known for his kind heart and grizzly back. He had a big strong back, and he loved his martial arts, but he loved his family. He loved his family the most, and so he would do whatever it took to making sure the family was okay.
I imagine I clearly did not know. Sounds like an amazing human being, but that your success and recovery probably gave him great happiness. Do you think so?
Yeah, 100%. Ken and I spent a lot of time crabbing and fishing on the boat, and I started crabbing with him locally here, and we would spend hours and hours on the boat, and sometimes we can just see something on the boat and we subliminally know what each other's thinking and have a good chuckle. And you get to a point where you don't even need to communicate, you just look at each other with eyes. But there's so many people that Ken has impacted their lives, and not just me, which I'm super grateful for the time that Ken has given me and invested into me and giving me a safe place. But he is deeply missed in this community by his family, his wife, his kids. Not only just me as he impacted. It's just the list is endless.
Wow.
And that is a legacy that we all kind of strive to want to leave behind.
Yeah, for sure. I'll do some research and try to link I will link to some pieces on Ken and at the bottom of the podcast when it's published.
Thank you.
In several pieces I read about you, you acknowledge that many individuals, especially those within the Indigenous communities, face marginalization, this abuse, trauma, barriers that non-Indigenous people don't face to the same degree. Can you speak about your Tsawwassen Nation culture and how you feel this connection to culture has supported you as a human being, making you a better man, helping you in your recovery, giving you peace today?
Tsawwassen has revitalized its culture over the last decade. There's been a huge push for revitalization, but it's our language has come back now, our housing has come back, our agricultural is coming back, our fundamental longhouse principles are coming stronger and stronger. It's always been there. And Tsawwassen and the Costa Salish people, we don't do sweats. We do a lot of longhouse ceremonies and events and like that. But it's really a community. It's a community of people, that is very unique. That I I am proud to say that if I go one day, that I will be walked all the way down to Tsawwassen Drive in honor. And we do that for every single person We show up at the Longhouse, or we show up at the Rec Center. We have Treaty Day, Indigenous Day, Truth and Reconciliation, Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's Day, and the March. You're starting to see Tsawwassen and many other Indigenous communities open the doors a little bit more to allowing um, non-Indigenous people that want to express interest in understanding on that path of reconciliation, which 15 years ago was just a little blurb in a
Yeah.
conversation that
Yeah.
now has like moved that needle so far over in today's environment that this is 100-year-old thing that is going to continue to keep transpiring as we find out more and more information. But you see it in UNDRIP, you see it in corporations, you see it in people's dinner tables as they start to talk and understand amongst themselves and get real factual information. You see it in the schooling system. Now it's being, talked about in a good way, not only just in the school systems, but school systems like Delta now work directly with Tsawwassen First Nations to making sure that Tsawwassen's history is in the curriculum, that Musqueam's curriculum is in also into Vancouver, and Samiamu and Katesi. So it's very now specific, and that's really part of Truth and Reconciliation. I'm sure when you grew up, same with me, we learned a lot about what happened in the United States. We learned about what happened to Blackfoot and the Crees and stuff like that, which was not relevant. Well, it is for sure, and the decimation of people, but we're really starting to see real specific information and understanding and compassion and understanding again, and just like this empathy. But we're not looking for empathy. We're not here to shame and blame. It's we've gone past that needle. It's about walking hand in hand and understanding the culture. you know you see art everywhere, but there is some advantages and disadvantages of the society right now that is happening. But I would hope that most are positive impacts within the region. And so, you know, it's a daily understanding from people that want to get involved.
Yeah, it's my son is attending a school in Surrey, South Surrey, that Chief Chappelle of Semiamhu land, that's the unceded territory that we are on, is very much a part of their curriculum. And I was thrilled to see that. And I'm always excited to have him teach me something new, my 7-year-old son, that he learns. And that at least shows that we've come a little ways than from when you and I were in elementary school. So that's good to see. Your crabbing work. So you're on a crabbing boat. You're crabbing. This is a successful business venture. Now you described a very, very thorough, with many arms, successful business that you own today in Tsawwassen Shuttles. How did you turn your entrepreneurial spirit of shoveling snow and crabbing with Ken into your business today? How did that happen?
So I have fished on all kinds of boats: large boats, seine boats, crab boats, fishing boats. Fished all the way around the Hecka Strait with Les Maxwell and the Carmana Light and Johnson Strait, on a seine boat, and Goose Bank and Johnson Strait, Nitnat. Just a variety of different experiences from different folks on different boats. It kind of rhymed. That was a good one. I like that. But it was my daughter. Once she was born, I was fishing up north in the Queen Charlottes. It really dawned on me that as a newly father, I want to be close to my kids. I don't want to be moving around or being displaced or disconnected. And so I had the strong desire to figure out how can I be home and still be able to provide for my family. And so had a commercial crab license down here, got my first boat. But I'm a third year carpenter. And that's what I decided to start my roots with when I came back from crabbing up north. And I finally bought my first boat. And once I built that boat and it was ready to go, there was a few people that helped me. Derek Allison, he was going to meetings, a longtime friend as well. He owns Blue Steel. He lent me $10,000 to buy an engine and a leg for the boat, and he said he would lend it to me at 6% interest for a 2-year payment plan. I
Okay.
jumped on it right away. And then there's Kevin from Seal Tech. He owns crab traps, and I didn't know Kevin. I walked in the door one day and I said, Kevin, I know you don't know me, but I would like to see if you would lend me 40 traps. I promise to pay you back. And then Kevin said, do you know such and such from Tsawwassen? Yeah. You know such and such else from Tsawwassen? Yes, sir, I do. I was proud to say I knew. He said, well, they both came in here, said the same thing, and never paid me. So he says, what makes you different? I said, all I have is my word. All I have today to offer you is humble and humility, and come in here with my words and promise to pay you back. And so he nodded and he pondered his thoughts for about 30 seconds, and he said, okay, you know what I'm going to do? Well, both of them, I was so successful at it that I paid them both back within like 6 months. Right? And they were both paid off. And then I ended up getting more traps and really got into the commercial crabbing. But there was a pivotal moment when I was crabbing and salmon fishing, because I got to figure out how can I use these boats while they're also not being used for crabbing and salmon. And it's a sad reality is that our fishing industry in BC is on life support,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
There is no more fishing really. There's very little crabbing, prawning, halibut. Other resources are being depleted at exponential rates, and so huge concern. But I see these boats tied up to the dock all day. I see these fishermen walking back and forth, just checking on their boat, pumping them out, and not leaving the dock. I was like, I refuse to be that. I refuse to have my boat with barnacles and algae stuck to the bottom of them and not being tied from the dock. So how do I get into marine contracts? How do I go after stuff within the region? And I started to just figure out like I would bid on a job, I'd lose miserably. Ask questions. I'm a big why. Like I'm like a 4-year old. My son says why all the time, like,
Yes.
and so I was a 30-year-old saying why, right? And I want it in writing as well, please. And so, your boat wasn't fast enough. Okay, I got a new engine. You needed different this, different that. You needed certificates. Fine. I went and started doing all the certificates. I went to school and did my 150-ton masters in ship operator, so I can go over and beyond, get the right insurance, get the liability. Like it was all a learning curve for me, but I was willing to turn those no's into yeses. And then all of a sudden, I started winning marine contracts, and now the boats were starting to be used maybe once a year, twice a year on small little opportunities. And then it just ballooned. Now I got 5 boats, and we're on almost every major project. And we're executing, like I said, salmon, ooligans, water, estuary, like the endless amount of shuttling and crew and safety boat. And, there's just so much opportunities, which I heard the province talk about truth and reconciliation, and when there was federal and provincial opportunities that Indigenous people were going to get a little bit of kick at the can. And so that's where it kind of really started. And then I just reinvested my money into getting better equipment, then getting my first bus, and then getting 2 buses, 3 buses, 10 buses, 20 buses, and now 6 sweepers, 6 water trucks, 8 tow trucks. We got close to 70 people working. But the reality of what I'm saying, has taken a tremendous amount of sacrifices. Uh, Christmas, holidays, family events, relationships, children, sacrificing their time so I can go to work and dedicating. And so, I guess I have a mind of an entrepreneur, but you got to have the heart of a spirit to keep it moving forward. But do I do I make any more today than I did when I was fishing on my boat, crabbing with Ken? Not that much. I become an employer and rich in assets, for sure. I got the freedom to stay home to take care of my kids, to be here available when they text me and need me to pick them up from school. Uh, you know, I'm more business relationships now instead of like having to be out there grinding and grinding every single day like I did for 15 years straight.
Yes. So you like where you are right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do like where I am right now. Yeah. Because
Good.
it gives me a position where I could help other people, and to be in a place where, when my phone rings or I get text messages, whether, I could be a conduit for other people to make those connections. But also within the region, there's not many Indigenous people occupying the space right now that I'm in. And so it has shined a spotlight on me far and wide throughout BC and Canada, winning awards. But it's not for me, it's for the ones before me and the ones that are coming ahead of me. Because there's going to be a Steve 2.0, there's going to be another person from another community where their life is going to be impacted to the point where they want to just have that drive inside them to change.
Well, it leads perfectly to my next question for you. And there are people in a place today as we speak, this moment, this minute, who feel like there is no hope. I have tried everything and I'm done. Like it's like you said, those 2 years. It's just kind of a waiting period until the end. Um, what would you say to those people who are in that place where they just feel like there isn't hope, there is an opportunity for them to turn their lives around, that it's hopeless?
Yeah, when you bring that question up, it gets me a little emotional because I remind shoots me all the way back to those 2 years of accepting death in my life and being comfortable with it, and not feeling like there was anything available for me. Um, I think um, the biggest thing somebody could do is ask for help. And I remember asking. Unfortunately, I was asking the wrong people at that time. I was asking the people that I was using with if I had a problem, and they would say, "No, no, no, you're fine. Don't worry about it." They're the ones that want to obviously hold you with them because it makes them feel better that they're not alone, right? But there was other people that were listening, and like I said, Mike Baird showed up at my door, and I think the hardest part of and trying to get out of the position that you're in is the consistency to keep moving forward. And I've always said persistence overcomes resistance. It's something I've come up with since I was a kid, and I've really stuck to it. And I've seen people and businesses and communities in my life of years of me just kind of gently applying pressure to change the way that they think or they do policies or the way they interact with other people. I remember when I was first started, it took me 10 years to get a hug out of somebody, right? But I'm always a hugger, right? And they're
Yeah.
not. But now
Yeah.
they hug me every
Yeah.
time they see me, right? And so I think the hardest thing is when does it happen? When is the question? It's like I've tried all these things. I'm doing what I'm supposed to. But the hardest part is sitting on your hands and waiting for it to happen. Waiting for this guy upstairs or something to just give you your opportunity that's going to give you a shine. When that comes, I don't know, right? Everybody's uniquely different. What opportunities do they have? What resources? But for me, it was 4 years. It took me 4 years of just going to meetings every single day, waiting. And that was the hardest part because I would pull my hair out and be like, you know what, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. But I had so many people rooting for me. You know, I go back to Sylvia again in the meetings. She'd always tell me, she's like, he's got a plan for you.
Hmm.
He's got a plan for you. And you just wait. And I would always shake my head. I'm like, Sylvia, I don't want to hear it today. Right. And then now, 18 years later, she still says it to me. I told you he had a plan for you. Right. But to have people that honestly, truly believe in who you are, and, whether you failed or not, it's still like, you know what? Okay, you failed. Let's pick you back up. You know, in early years of recovery, and I don't know if you know much about it, but it sounds like you do. When you relapsed or went backwards in any sort, you used to have to go back and do the principles all over again. You had to do
Yeah.
all the steps and all the principles and everything, and it was kind of a shame and blame model. And we look back, and it's like no wonder people never came back,
Yeah.
right? Because it was too hard to walk in the door. Now we look at it as harm reduction. One day is better than no day. 1 week is better than nothing. 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. You didn't lose those years. So let's still celebrate your success. And so, how do we celebrate their success in whatever it is? They went to work for 1 day. Good. Okay. Can we get them to two, maybe next week? Can we get them to 5 days of work in a week in a year from now? Right? Where is the success to rebuild their principles and who they are as an individual? Not to make them colonized in today's environment, but to give them the skills to survive, to be able to hand something down to their children if they have any, right? But to leave
Yeah.
a good mark like Ken did.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a good way of looking at it, asking for help and asking the right people. I think sometimes when we're not ready, we purposely ask the wrong people. You think so?
100%. Yeah, we surround ourselves around the people that want to feed our nonsense sometimes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Forgiveness. I struggle with it. Have you forgiven those who wronged you as a child, as a youth, as a young person? Um, do you want to speak to where you're at in that area?
Yeah, it took me a lot of years for that. I have a hard time still right now. I don't have a relationship with my stepdad. I haven't talked to my mom in a couple of years now. In early sobriety of my recovery, I was so eager to, have my mom and my stepdad and just live kumbaya and forgive and forget. I don't forget, but can I forgive just a little bit?
Yeah.
But that took a lot of you know, like I said in early discussions, I hated sitting in that room. I'd be miserable, head down, arms crossed, and just keeping that seat warm. But I stayed. And then I remember I had one relapse. It was with Ken, living with Ken. And I humbly told Ken, and Ken looked straight at me in my eyes and he says, "Cuz I love you. But if you keep doing that, eventually nobody's gonna want to help you." But there were some key things there that I wasn't doing. I didn't want to go with the principles. I didn't want to go along. I was fighting everybody and everything, and just hated the whole process. And after that, I went home to Ken's house and I got on my knees, and it was the first time I actually prayed. And I didn't pray to God. I just prayed and got everything I could out of my system just to allow my heart to open up enough to forgive. Would I
Mhm.
allow my heart open up enough just to have just a little bit of understanding about where I'm at, and not be so angry? And I sat there for 45 minutes bawling my eyes out and getting everything out on the table, me and whoever alone. And you know, I don't allow. I can create boundaries. I don't have to allow the people in my life. But I do have a really good understanding today about history and what has happened prior to for my mom, my dad, and my stepdad. I mean, my biological and their history. And I've really figured out my genealogy all the way back from Europe, and back to the beginning of the 1800s to both sides of my great great grandparents and coming into Canada on
Wow.
both sides of my biological great 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 grandparents as well. And so, you know, come at a lens of understanding, but that doesn't give the right for people to hurt more or hurt others because they're hurting, right? And so, we didn't talk about, and I'm totally fine with mentioning this, but I was sexually abused by my grandfather growing up at 12 years old,
Mhm.
right? And, he is non Indigenous, and so that was on my mom's side. But that doesn't give me the right to go out and hurt others as well in that fashion. And so, you know, forgive, yeah, you know, I don't have to bear the look of them anymore, of him, because he's no longer on this earth. And so, but can I help, you know, change somebody else's perspective or give them the tools to try to survive through something like that? And so, do I have any regrets? Is there anything that I regret about my childhood? There may have been some words or some fights that I've had, and people that I may have hurt, but, I think my life has kind of molded me into who I am today as a person. And would I be here today without those experiences? Hard to say, but I would probably say no, right? And so it's unique to who I am, and we all have our own unique stories.
And you've broken a cycle, generational cycle.
Yeah.
That must be something that is that, well, I shouldn't assume, is that something that you feel really great about?
Yeah, for sure. I still struggle as a father. I think we all struggle as parents. We all have our
Yes.
moments we're not proud of. Uh, but I know as a father and an Indigenous person, we are on the first cycle of truth and reconciliation, and it takes 7 cycles to break the past trauma in history. So
Mm.
my kids will never, I would hope that they never have to go through what I have. But if they do, I want them to know that they can come to me and dad will take care of it. I will, honor them and listen to them, because the hardest thing that I had to go through was somebody telling me the day after not to ever talk about it again and just ignore it.
Yeah.
Right. And so, again, finding the right people to believe in you at the right time will make a world of difference.
Wow. Have you ever thought about writing a memoir? I know I've heard some movie talk, but have you thought about writing your story or working with someone to write your story?
I never thought about that. I know Nolan is working on a fundraiser for a documentary about my life story as
Yeah.
well. I think he's done fairly well, but there's still, probably a couple more years of fundraising before that gets kicked off. Memoir of a book, I never thought about that. So, I'm open to suggestions and opportunities to working with somebody, but not only for me, but for them and others, just to, you know, show it's okay to talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll link to the film website. It's a fantastic website with a trailer where Stephen speaks a little bit about the story. So I highly encourage you to check out that link when I publish it. Um, I know we're running over here, so we'll wrap things up. What's next for you, Stephen? Family the focus. I know the film is in the works. What is really kind of something that's on your mind as your next step?
I think part of being an entrepreneur is you don't show all your cards.
They're
And
gonna pull the
I,
no comment.
I'm always trying to stay one step ahead, but I think continue to show that we have a place here, which I know we do, and I think society knows that. Uh, Continue to serve my community, however it may be, whether it's an elected or whether it's on the outside of my community. Am I done with politics? I'm not sure. I have a strong desire to continue serving my community somehow, some way. Um, but I really do enjoy working with Indigenous communities throughout the Salish Sea, and showing my kids that there's a big world out there. And while it may be big, you realize, as I'm sure you know, that it's quite small.
Yeah.
And so the stain that we make today will leave the mark in the future. And so try to do something good and show the kids that what they do today will matter. And so, but they can change the perspective of people, and still have a very prosper life. And so, do I know for business wise? I'm not really sure. I get a lot of requests and opportunities all the time. I find myself a conduit as well to try to see others succeed in their life. So yeah, I'm just kind of flowing along right now, enjoying it, and wait till something presents itself. Getting into daycares, that's my next one.
Oh, okay. So day by
Hmm.
day, wow. I have a feeling it's going to be, news after news. There's, I think that lots of layers to, I think what you have in mind. So I look forward to hearing more about it as it evolves. I end every conversation with asking guests about one or two nonprofits that they want to highlight, maybe that are close to them or that they're passionate about. Any that you want to mention today, Steven?
Yeah, I mentioned Reach. Reach works with children with special needs and autism, right? And I continue to keep supporting that. That's where my daughter got a bunch of help from as well, and so I'm forever grateful for the time we spent there. I like Plenty of Plates. They have, done amazing work. Ash, um, you know, they cook about 1,800 meals a day down there for people on the East End side. And we know that there's close to 80 to 85% of the homeless people down there are from Indigenous communities throughout Alberta, Washington, and BC. And so you could just imagine the displacement of people. And so, yeah, that's a good organization as well. And I look forward to continue supporting them.
Okay, so I'll make sure to highlight those and to link to them, Reach and Plenty of Plates, uh, when the podcast is live very soon. Steven, thank you for sharing your insight, your experience, your story, for taking the time, your success. Congratulations on everything that you've achieved, including your beautiful family. And I just wanted to thank you again for being here and joining me, sharing with me today. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. And I appreciate your patience.
Of course.
Thanks, everybody. Please be kind and really connect. You are listening to Rachel Thexton Connects.